Hello, and welcome to School Health Presents, working with our exceptional individuals during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm Dr. Rheipp, and this video today is actually going to focus on video modeling. Why video modeling? Well, we know that video modeling actually does three things for us. Number one, when done well, it can actually be a great representation of proper social interactions between individuals. What is the proper way to greet someone? What is the proper way to respond to someone and interact with them? The second thing it can do is actually provide a guided and specific video towards how to do actions, whether they be actions and chores at home or things that you should be doing in the classroom, or more importantly, things that you can be doing in the workplace. The third thing that they do is actually give ideas as to how to respond to environmental factors. How do you respond if there's an emergency that goes on? Or how do you respond if, as you're walking down the street, a dog starts barking at you? These are things that are taken for granted sometimes by neurotypical adults. We have an understanding of how it is we're supposed to interact with things. We're able to pick up little idiosyncrasies as to how to do things just by watching or interacting. That's not the case for so many of our exceptional individuals. So what we want to do is make sure that we're creating video modeling in a way that actually works for them. How do we do this? What do we go about doing? And aren't there products already out there? Yes, there are absolutely phenomenal video modeling products that are available, whether they be in software-based form, on the web, or in apps. Please do your research, do your homework, see what things work for you if you're going to pursue doing some of these. But when you're in situations like we're in currently, where you're pretty much on your own, what you want to do is make sure there are specific things for those exceptional individuals with whom you're working. Then what we can do as we come back together for face-to-face instruction in the fall, we can actually use some of those ideas to encourage elementary students, to encourage secondary students, to encourage university students to help within the creation of these, so that we're growing a community that very well supports our exceptional individuals. What do I mean by that? How are we going through that? That's part of what we're going to be discussing here in the video. Let's talk basics first and foremost. When you are putting together any type of video modeling, the first thing you've got to do is know what you're going to be focused on. What happens in some videos, and I've actually seen this in some of the videos that are out there, is that people will have a great idea and a wonderful topic, and about 5 minutes in, they take off on some tangent and then try and bring it back in toward the end of the video. Not everyone is sitting at home with a video studio. You know, people laugh with whom I'm working and speaking, because they're like, well, how do you put these videos together? It basically is my computer, my camera in that computer filming me as we go in. This is not a fancy studio, as you can tell. This is not a fancy background. It's my living room. So my living room right now is Studio AT, for those of you who haven't already been informed of that. But that simplicity allows us to do so many things along the way. And knowing where you're going actually allows you to keep everything focused in a line. So number one, know where you're going. Number two, plan out what you're doing. As you put your videos together, please be sure, script out things, practice things, go over the ideas in your mind. For those of you who are wanting to just speak more naturally, you don't want to speak as though you're reading off a script, create an outline first, but rehearse that outline. Whether you're going out and taking a walk and kind of focusing in, and that's what I do on a regular basis, or you're going out and standing in front of a mirror. I know some people prefer to do that. Whatever you're doing, rehearse that information, have that plan, and be able to follow through with that plan. Next, plan What is it you're going to need all around you? My background's simple, all right? It's bookcases in my living room. With the advent of what we've got today available to us digitally, you can create any background that you want. So for those of you out there doing some videos and thinking about doing videos in the future, green screens are a great way to go. And when I say green screens, don't be afraid in that particular case to run down to your local Walmart, Target, wherever you go, and get some green sheets that you can hang in the background. Because not only can you be doing the videos then, that also transitions to something we'll be talking about, bringing your students in later on for the creation of the videos. So a background can be anything. We've seen in Zoom and in some of the other platforms that are being used for our online interactions today, the ability to change the background. Those are great. But what you want to do is make sure that the background itself is not necessarily going to be something that's distracting. I've seen some really neat ideas for green screens, but being there and sitting and talking about science and having a picture of the stars twinkling and things like that can actually be disruptive for what our individuals may be focused in on. So plan your background accordingly. Know that you don't need a lot of fancy equipment. Again, you've heard, I'm just simply recording these on my laptop and getting them put up onto YouTube. So there are simple ways to actually do this too. If you do have studio software, great. That way you can do some dubbing, you can do some other things. Here's what you want to be aware of. Be careful about going back and changing too much or relying on the idea that things can be edited. They can't always be edited as exactly as you want them unless you're in a fancy studio. And we have phenomenal engineers that are out there doing great videos. We're trying to create videos that are effective, that work. So again, the equipment doesn't need to be fancy. Even a cell phone camera will work for some of the things we're trying to do. So we've got our equipment. We've got an idea of what the background is. We've got a plan. We've rehearsed that plan. What do we do next? Next, we actually go through and make that video. But here are some things you want to remember. Number one, be explicit about directions. Why do I need to be explicit about directions? Isn't it one of those just do this? No, it's not. Don't forget, some of our individuals will need almost a step-by-step play. So they've got to understand, I do this, then I do this, then I do this. And you may need to repeat that, and that's okay. Even as you're going through, if you're creating some type of an action piece, you want to be breaking it down so you can do the action. And let me give you something concrete right now. The action of maybe sweeping, where you have the broom in your hand and you're moving the broom back and forth. In order to sweep, what you want to do is hold the broom so that it's touching the floor. As it's touching the floor, you want to make sure you are sweeping things all in the same direction. Something as simple as that makes sense to us. But if we're just telling our individuals, listen, when you're sweeping, just make sure you're moving the broom along the floor, guess what else you could be doing? Sweeping back and forth like this. And if you're in a squared off room, all you're doing is shifting where the dirt's going and don't have necessarily a way of collecting it. So have explicit instructions. Also, make sure that the actions that you're doing are easily seen. Don't let your hands drop out of the frame when you're saying, and then you want to shift just a little bit. What is just a little bit, and where are your hands? What are you doing? What are you suggesting to them? So make sure you're being explicit with that too, explicit with the visual side of things, as well as the instructional auditory side. Make sure you've got things in there that, again, an individual can latch on to. Don't be afraid to use props. You see my good friend Lamikins, and she doesn't appreciate being called a prop. I just want to share that with you. But you've seen her in several videos. What you haven't necessarily seen is a prop that I love to use a lot. This is a time timer. I've actually got another time timer set right behind the camera, and I'm able to gauge how long these videos are. And so I'm able to use that in two different ways. I'm able to use it to explain how you want to keep individuals on track by knowing time, and also have it in the background so I realize how much time is going on. Don't be afraid to create things. You saw this a little bit earlier when we were actually talking about visual schedules at home, and we were talking about using the talking pen to make them auditory. This is simply a shoebox, all right, with a piece of paper on it. But if you're going to use a prop, don't use props to be cute. Use props in a purposeful way, because when you use the props in a purposeful way, that idea of the transfer of information psychologically is stronger. If you're just using lamekins and saying, and this is a stuffed animal, and you've got lamekins sitting on your lap, but you're doing something and talking about sweeping, the focus tends to be back again on the stuffed animal and not on the action that you're doing. So be aware of that. So those are some tips about putting your own video modeling videos together. Be specific to that individual. You notice I said sweeping, washing dishes, washing clothes, if you've got an individual that can do that, washing hands, kind of important in today's day and age. Use things that are pragmatic to that individual for the home life. Use it the same way within schools. How do I put my box up into the shelf in the correct way? So make those videos something that can be used over and over again. You notice earlier in this video, I talked about bringing our kids into this too. When we get back to school, we've got to recognize that education and the environment of education has changed. We can sit there and say, oh, I want to go back to the way it used to be. Really? If you want to go back to the way it used to be, we used to use quill pens and ink. No, that wasn't me. I didn't use those. I actually go back to the days of stone tablets and chisels, but that's beside the point. What you want to realize is that we've changed. We're adapting, we're moving forward, and in some ways it can actually be stronger for what we're attempting to do with our exceptional individuals too. So the creation of videos can be done within the context of classrooms. Have our elementary students start practicing making their own videos. Why? What educational purpose does that have? Have you seen things like TikTok and other types of videos out there? Do you understand that the video creation marketplace, even something as simple as what you might see on Twitch or that, is actually one of the rising areas for individuals to actually have a career later on? That's why you have so many of these groups now on YouTube that have their own channels. They're actually using that as the way they have an occupation later on. So what we're doing is making something pragmatic here. The kids will love doing the videos, and guess what you bring into those videos then? You bring in the idea of scripting, language arts. You bring in the idea of practice and knowing visual cueing, science, psychology. You also bring in the timing aspect. So there's going to be math. How far do you put the camera away? When do you do a close-up? What's good? What's not? So you're doing comparisons too. So there's so much that you can be doing. And for some of our elementary students, they can be reading their favorite stories. You can have that individual in front of a camera not being afraid to actually share something now, because presenting in front of a camera for some individuals is vastly different than presenting in front of a class. So get the elementary students involved, bring in a green screen, again a sheet, and have a simple camera set up where they can be doing some things. For our high school students, take it one step further. With our high school students, have them create videos that, again, are videos about how to access areas within the school. Also have some of the individuals that may be taking sign language off to the side, or screen in where you could have someone actually doing the signing too. Have students that are focused on the inclusion of closed captioning. We forget about closed captioning all too often for some of our individuals. So we want to make sure we bring that in. Create accessible materials, but bring our students in on how this is actually created. We can approach it from any type of interdisciplinary focus and at the same time be creating things that allow for greater access and more of a community feeling as we go through. So the challenge that we have when it comes to video modeling as we move forward is not how do we get the stuff, but it's how do we apply it to classes and have teachers, have parents, have the outside world understand that the design and the implementation of this actually is critical to the education of our students and what's going to be happening in their futures, because we're seeing the foundation of their future right now. So video modeling, an essential piece of what we're doing today. It is an absolutely wonderful way for our students with exceptionalities to begin to understand how to do things, how to interact with one another, how to interact with the world and the environments that will be put forth before them. Keep moving forward on this and recognize that, again, the strength of all this lies in your ideas. We're not coming at it from a single way, and there is no one size fits all. So how we do this is really dependent upon you and the needs of the individuals with whom you work.